All right, well, thanks everyone for coming out. Really appreciate everyone's time. I know no one would be able to do any of this work without you guys as volunteers, so I really appreciate the time that you give. My name is Drea. I use she, her pronouns. I'm one of the co-responders. For anyone who hasn't met me, I haven't met most of the Calvary folks. I have worked a lot with the Golden Pantry, and I always say it the other way, and then the First United Methodist. But so what a co-responder is essentially like a mental health professional that works with police, fire, EMS. It kind of just depends. Here in Golden, we are more aligned with the police department, but we also help out with any of the first responders. It's essentially like another branch of first responding, but I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been in Golden for about 1.5 years. Before Golden, I was in Denver for the STAR program. It's more of an alternate response where you only have a clinician and a paramedic through Denver Health. And then before that, I was a victim advocate. So I've done quite a few things. I believe in public service. So for anyone who is retired public service or works in it, thank you for your work. But yeah, it's a little bit about me. And then we have Angela over here.
Hi, I'm Angela. I'm also a co-responder at Golden. What else? I also came from Denver. Drea and I were part of the same program, and so that's how we ended up here together. So individually, we've been doing the mental health first response for about 5 years each. So coming to Golden from Denver is a switch, but we have a lot more freedom to do respond how we want to in various situations. So we have a lot more of ability to make decisions on our own in terms of what we can do for folks. So that's really nice. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist. It is a misnomer. It's just a psychotherapist, but I think people assume that I know a lot more about marriage and family therapy than I do. But I came from California, so I'm licensed in California as well as here in Colorado. And I think that's it. To give some context, in order for us to be considered social workers and marriage and family therapists, we have to get a graduate degree in social work, or mine was in counseling psychology, and we have to get 3,000 clinical hours in order to even sit for our exam, myself anyway, to sit for my exam. So 3,000 hours, including supervision and all that kind of stuff. So that took about, 3-4 years for each of us. And then to be here in Golden, they required at least 2 years of experience working in first response. So we did meet all the criteria, and here we are. So that is kind of our background. So,
and then we work with Bodie. We're on Bodie's team, so I'm sure folks here are familiar with Bodie. We work pretty hand in hand in a lot of different ways, and so we are under the Thriving Communities team at the city / the police department.
So you all probably, or a fair amount of you probably know Sarah Vane. She is our direct boss. So she's wonderful, and we are the ones that are doing the work under her team. And today's presentation will be basically, basic information around mental health crises. It might seem pretty basic. We do provide similar training to folks within the city and all that kind of stuff, so we try and make it as broad as possible. Just wanted to kind of give you context around that. So, all right. What is a mental health or behavioral health crisis? So it's in any situation where a person's behavior puts them or someone else at risk of harming themselves or others, and it affects their ability to function on a daily basis. And that is considered grave disability, and that is a little bit more difficult to parse out when there are a lot of different things that are being considered. So someone who might be living in a hoarding situation, just because that might not be the lifestyle that we choose for ourselves, if they are able to meet their basic needs, then they are allowed to live that way, even though, so we're not here to judge them. We're here to provide resources around what kinds of supports they may need in order to clear out their stuff, and things like that. So that's just an example. So,
and crisis is self-defined. We don't tell folks what a crisis is, or, oh, that's not really happening, or why are you so upset about that? If that makes sense. So if somebody, that's how we document a lot, is a self-defined crisis as X, Y, and Z, whatever the presenting issue is. And kind of like Angela said, as far as not there to judge them, we're meeting them where they're at, quite literally, and that can be physically, just out in the world, emotionally, all the things. So we try to meet people where they're at and meet whatever that most presenting problem is, especially if it is more of a law enforcement capacity. So if there is any sort of welfare check that gets called in, those come in all shapes and sizes. Somebody's sleeping on a park bench, welfare check, I don't know if they're breathing. Or we're going to somebody's home who it could be a hoarder, it could be a hoarding situation. As long as they're getting their basic needs met, they're feeding themselves, they are drinking water, not necessarily having running water in their home, that's a whole nother thing. They are like just making sure those very, very basic needs are being met. We might see it as, oh, there's a lot going on here, I want to get this person help, but then we also meet them where they're at. What kind of help are you looking for? Versus like, this is what I think you should do, if that makes sense. So, self-defined crisis.
So going into just things about the brain and our emotions, this is a very simple model that I like using of our emotionality and rationality. Whenever our emotions are up, our ability to think and our prefrontal cortex, that is the decision-making part of our brain, that function goes down. There is a good video that I have after this that kind of explains it. And that goes for all of us. And so it's just a matter, typically when folks are in crisis, it's a matter of being dysregulated and not being able to bring that prefrontal cortex back online to be able to understand and rationalize what's going on.
And there's a lot more research just in general about brain development. Brains don't really develop fully until about age 25. But if you think about that, you become a legal adult at 18, but yet you're still developing that executive functioning of that prefrontal cortex. And so when all of that, either way, regardless, when all of that is not functioning as it should be, the brain is activating in a different part that is more survival. That changes how somebody's could present because they're not thinking the most rationally, because they're not physically able to, because they are triggered. They've been through trauma, and so that's a trauma response versus a rational response. So when we say things like emotions are high, it's not because of hormones or because they're teenagers going through adolescence. That can be a part of it, but it's usually not the number one. Like we're not looking at it as from a lens of they're overreacting. There's something chemically off balance and unbalanced and dysregulated that is not allowing for some of those more functional cognitive decisions to be made. And we're often meeting them when they're up here, but people are not who they are in crisis all the time. People are fully, just like everyone in this room, we're all fully formed human beings, and we're not who we are at our best when we are in a state of heightened emotions because something is dysregulated.
And this is also something to consider are folks who are experiencing neurodiversity. So people who have traumatic brain injuries or developmental disabilities, in terms of being able to regulate, that looks differently, and that requires a different level of understanding of the individual in order to be able to regulate them or help them regulate sometimes. And we see a fair amount of that also. This is, so I didn't write who this is by. Daniel Siegel is a psychologist, and he has created this idea of the hand model of the brain. This is I'm pretty sure it's geared towards children, this video, but it is, out of all of the videos that I've seen about the hand model of the brain, this is the most concise and the most clear. So it's good. So let me play that for you all.
Ever felt a big reaction to something and not known why? Here's a way to help you understand your brain and manage your behaviour. The hand model of the brain. The bottom of your hand represents the brainstem and is involved with the automatic physical processes that keep us alive, like breathing and our heart rate. Your thumb is your limbic system, and with your brainstem forms part of your emotional brain. This helps you to manage and understand your feelings and stress responses. The outside of your hand and fingers are your cortex, or your thinking brain. When the thinking and emotional brain work together, it's easier to manage your emotions, talk with others, and problem solve. But if you feel surprised, unsafe or scared, your emotional brain takes immediate action. You can act much faster without working with your thinking brain, so you flip your lid. If you're in real danger, acting fast can help keep you safe, and that's really important. And then when the danger has passed, your lid comes back on. Your thinking brain is back in control. But sometimes we flip our lids when we don't need to. How we think and behave isn't helpful. You can practice putting your lid back on by breathing slowly or by spending time with someone you trust. This tells your emotional brain you are safe, and it can work with your thinking brain again. Now your whole brain can help you manage your behaviour and your feelings.
Comments, questions, anything? So we'll go back to that and we'll talk about how that plays a role in how we respond to folks and how folks respond to us during moments of crisis. So how does a crisis occur? Lots of different things play into this. Typically there is an inciting incident that has been is the quote unquote straw that broke the camel's back. Say someone has been dealing with a lot of financial issues and or like familial issues, but then this is the time where family members said that they're going to be kicking them out of the house. That maybe conversation could cause this point of crisis where then we would be called if this individual is not able to handle stressors and their coping and all of that does not work in these instances. So also perception of the event that occurred is very important because perception is reality for individuals. To say that someone is not experiencing something because that's not the intention, it doesn't matter what the intention is. What matters is the impact of what you said or what is being done is the major point. And so the way that they perceive it is their reality, whether or not it is the actual truth of what's going to be happening. So feeling overwhelmed, feeling a loss of control, not having the mental flexibility that one typically does while not in crisis, and being unable to respond in an appropriate manner are just some examples of typically when we get called in, especially. So, and I imagine a lot of you have seen folks in crisis moments, so.
Yeah, and I think that the big one, the inability to respond appropriately, I think that's a big one because we call that like incongruence. So it could be a throwaway, what you think is a throwaway comment, a throwaway question, and there could be all kinds of underlying things going on, and that is a trigger, and it can lead to a very escalated, elevated response. It's like, all I did was ask you how your mom was doing, you know? It can be very innocuous, and so it can be tricky to, okay, now I put my foot in my mouth, now what do I do, right? And so it's like, how do I backtrack? Obviously, like things like apologizing, like didn't know that happened, or something along those lines, because there's so much more going on underneath the surface typically, and that can be that's for everyone in this room. So, but that can be very jarring. It's like, okay, well, I was just trying to help, and then it's turned into a whole thing. So I think we can talk about that. Just we're going to do some role playing later today too. So we can kind of go through some scenarios of how one would respond to somebody who's in a crisis.
So just a couple of things to keep in mind. I imagine that when folks are observing individuals and maybe your sense comes up of maybe something might not be completely right or something's going on with this individual, things to kind of look out for your own safety would be folks pacing around or their body tensing, closed fists, crossed arms. Just looking at body language is pretty big. So even if they're saying they're calm, if their body language says otherwise, that's something to keep in mind. If they raise their voice, if their breathing pattern has changed, if they're in an argumentative tone or talking over you, just stay calm as you can be, because responding in a way that kind of matches them can potentially escalate them more.
So, any other examples that we can think of if somebody can tell when they're escalating?
Some things that you all have seen?
Folding hands into fists.
Yep.
Fists. I'm trying to think of other things that I have seen.
Like sweating,
Yeah.
like
Sweating.
so a physiological response. Something that's just not within their normal behavior or what we've observed normally. It's like, oh, something that seems off. So and so is doing something differently today.
Well, and also having someone's understanding of what their baseline is also, because I think of folks who have autism and who have tics and things like that, and those are naturally part of their typical behavior. So say someone is like crossing their arms or tensing their hands or something like that, might not necessarily mean that they're getting escalated. It's just some way that some folks use to cope.
Yeah, especially fidget items that we see a lot more today. I usually have mine, but it's like a little spiky ring, but that can totally be just within their baseline. Do folks know what I mean, but where we mean by baseline behaviors? See some nodding heads. Yeah, so typical, expected. We use that as well, just especially with their like regular callers into like 911, for example. Well, that's just their baseline, that this person is always getting fights with mom, something like that. If something is out of that norm, that's when we start paying attention a little bit more. But yeah, baseline is just kind of like what we're used to seeing, sort of thing.
And I think another example is, and I know we've experienced it here with community members coming to visit our pantry, is that they seem oblivious to other people being around and sort of almost demand attention right away. And you can see the tension rise with the other people who are just waiting their turn, or, you know.
Yeah, you sense the tension in the room increase, right?
Yeah, because we have to think about everyone else around us too, not just the person that it might be escalated, but how is it affecting everyone else in the room?
Could you talk a little about the scale of these factors? Someone could just be sitting down stewing like that, or they could be out and out, maybe loud. So
Can you repeat the
and is
question?
that like, is someone escalating a matter of their self-description, or is it like us feeling uncomfortable with what they're doing?
That's a good question. So the question essentially is like, how to scale escalation, and it sounds like you're trying to ask like what your response is versus the other person's response is. And we actually go into it a little bit more about discomfort versus safety, being unsafe
Versus uncomfortable.
unsafe versus uncomfortable is what we talk about. So we'll discuss that in a little bit, but that's just something to keep in mind, because you want to keep yourself in mind and the safety of other individuals, while also not invalidating what's going on with this person. So maybe when we get to that, you can see if you still have that kind of question, and then we can address that. Is that cool? Okay, speaking of, assessing the situation, kind of some of the things that you consider is the environment safe, and are others and yourself safe? We don't want folks putting themselves at risk to mitigate a situation if that is gonna create more of a safety risk to everyone else involved. And so the thing that we talk about is there's a difference between feeling uncomfortable and unsafe and danger versus discomfort. And so there's a psychologist that is in the next slide that I think summarizes it pretty well in terms of questions that you ask yourself when you're trying to figure out if you're uncomfortable versus are you unsafe.
And then I imagine each organization has its own kind of set of ground rules or policies for when things do escalate, especially around that first question about is everyone safe. There might not be anything formal in place, like, okay, this person has violated the rules. Let's say we give them 5 tries and then we're gonna take a break. I think it seems more like something escalates really high. There's like assaultive behavior police are involved, and then they're trespassed. Do y'all have like any sort of like rules around that? Like, is there expectations for guests?
Well, I know the pantries, the local pantries do around expected behavior.
Okay.
Our behavior and then the guests who come, their behavior.
Okay. Is there anything they like sign or just pay, these are the rules when you're here sort of thing, or?
Yeah, we came up with, well, Kirk, you can speak to that.
We do have a code of conduct and it was shared across all the pantries. I'm not clear on whether we have
A sign,
read
we
it to
don't do
somebody for
sign
a first visit
copies
or
for
have them sign it
pictures.
once.
Okay.
Do we show that to people if it's their first visit here? So I would say we would offer that if we perceive a potential problem. We don't share that with everybody, but it's across all the pantries in Golden. We
Okay.
shared that together.
Okay.
And that's just something you might want to consider right off the bat when people are accessing services. It's like, here's kind of an orientation of things that are expected, and then laying out what is expected instead of something happening and being like, oh, this is against our code of conduct, and then them
Right.
being like, oh, well, I didn't know that. Some people thrive around rules, and that might deter some folks, but that's just something to consider of when you give resources to folks on their first go, so that if there are any issues, you can always circle back to that and have that be kind of a.
The other thing that makes me wonder is if it would be wise to have a code of conduct which would really be non-confrontational. If someone sort of gets themselves on a path where they need some accountability, I don't think we have any rules that says 1 offense or 2
Right,
offenses.
yeah,
So
that's an extreme version, I think.
But it could be that we would have 2 different documents then. Again, the first one would be meant to just share joint expectations.
Mm-hmm.
Theirs from us and ours from them, but then maybe we should have one that's a little bit more consequential. So
Yeah,
these are good ideas. Thank you.
You see it a lot at shelters, especially if, like the new one that's opening in Lakewood, they have an entire like interview process before they accept or decline that client. And so laying out all the expectations, and expectations is more of they have a choice in it versus rules. These are the rules, these are the
Right.
punitive rules. So that can be a good way, and it could be they go years without any sort of issues, but then, and might not necessarily remember, oh yeah, that document I looked at years ago, this one time. But it's easier to refer back to that as a staff. It's like, we laid out these expectations and you've violated them a couple times, what's going on, how can I help you, things like that. So just an idea, because I know it's usually when stuff escalates and it's at that point of disruption, and that's what I'm always usually going kind of falling back on is how disruptive is this behavior to staff and other guests, because we have to think about everybody in these spaces. It's a vulnerable population typically, or some sort of identity that's vulnerable, and so there can be, like I said earlier, there's stuff going on with all of us, and if there is a client that is repeatedly disruptive, how are we going to address that while still being supportive as best as we can? So food for thought just for all the organizations, just how can we best serve the community while at the same time protecting all our staff and all our guests.
And along those same lines, I know that some places similarly downtown with shelters and resources and things like that, if someone says, say like 3 strikes or whatever, they hit they're asked to maybe take a break from seeking resources there, but there is an appropriate means of potentially them coming back if they, meet up with an individual one-on-one, talk about maybe a plan of moving forward of how can we keep this from happening again, so that it doesn't completely cut them off from resources. So it's like them kind of being able to have a plan to keep everything going and moving forward instead of being like, oh, I'm never allowed to go back there
Right.
again.
If you, by the way, if you've seen what I'm calling the second page, if you've seen anything that you could share with us that was used, that was sort of more, we'd be happy to look at that, and then the pantries will discuss it, and we really want it to be uniform across whole.
Sure. I'd have to look around. I haven't seen any, and I know Bethany I know all you work really hard to not all trespass or ban the same person from like all the services. But at the same time, there are consequences to actions, and so I think and if anything, the presentation is about how do we perceive, is this a disruptive behavior or is this a behavior that I might not be fully understanding, to not get to that point of total banishment. So yeah, but I'll look around.
You had a question?
I did, but you answered it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
You're good.
Yeah. Thanks.
So this is Raquel Martin. She is a psychologist. She is on the internet. I think there are a lot of psychologists and therapists nowadays going and doing a lot of psychoeducation online for folks about just life things. And so when I tried figuring out how to best parse out safety and discomfort, I think she kind of put it best. So
Is there captions in there? She talks really
there
fast.
is, yeah.
Okay.
There's like I think it's.
Oh yeah, she talks very fast. Just
And I can play it again if there are enough folks that want me to play it again.
is it a good volume too? Can everyone hear him and everything? The last video?
The last one was good value.
Okay.
Every time I feel triggered, I'm out. That's my body telling me it's not safe. Okay, so how do you differentiate between danger and discomfort? Same thing. If I'm uncomfortable, that's a no for me. There's a difference between danger and discomfort, and if you don't learn that difference, you'll stay stuck, avoiding growth, connection, and most likely mistaking safety for isolation. Wait, what? Being triggered doesn't always mean you're unsafe. It can mean your nervous system has recognized something, but that recognition doesn't equal reality. Danger means real harm. Discomfort means emotional activation. It stretches you, but it won't break you. But my body doesn't know that. If I feel it, it's real. Why would I stay in something that feels bad? Feelings are always real. They're data, but they're not facts. If you've lived in survival mode long enough, even peace can feel suspicious. If you treat every trigger like danger, you'll end up avoiding growth and calling it safety. Okay, but how am I supposed to know the difference in real time? I'm not about to start journaling mid-conflict. What does this even look like in real life? Real life means fast reactions and sometimes fast exits. But if you want to heal, not just cope, we have to start separating past alarms from present danger. So what you're saying is I just stay uncomfortable? No, I'm saying learn how to listen and question. That's the work. Start with these check-in questions. Am I reacting to what's happening now or something that happened before? Is this an actual threat or just a feeling I don't want to feel? And will leaving keep me safe or just comfortable? But when I'm triggered, I'm not thinking about all that. I just shut down or leave. So what am I supposed to do instead? Okay, so here's how you start practicing this in real life. I'm gonna walk you through 6 things you can do. First, name it out loud or write it down. Say, I feel activated, but what's the actual threat right now? Next, do a body scan before you react. Ask, is my heart rating? Am I breathing shallow? What emotion is rising? Third, check in with your trigger. Ask what just happened, what did it remind me of, or what do I need right now? Fourth, practice stretch, not snap. If it's safe, stay just 10% longer in the discomfort. Next, create a peace plan before you need it. That could be texting a friend, journaling, or saying, I need a moment before I decide. And 6, rehearse new endings to old stories. Just because you froze or fled in the past doesn't mean you have to now. Tell yourself, this time I'm safe and I get to choose differently. Okay, but what if I do all that and I still feel like leaving? Then leave. This isn't about forcing you to stay. It's about helping you know why you're leaving. Because when you leave, every time it gets hard, you don't just avoid pain, you also avoid progress. So healing means knowing when I need to actually leave and when I need to stay long enough to grow. Exactly. You're not meant to live in survival mode forever. The goal isn't to erase triggers, it's to build enough capacity that discomfort doesn't trick you into thinking you're in danger. You're meant to learn what safety actually feels like, even when it's unfamiliar. And most importantly, go birds, go birds.
Some people disregarded everything she said because she was no.
Some people are
So I hate this bothers me that I okay. So yes, some of the three questions to ask that she had mentioned, and I think the reason why we put this in this slide deck is because these are things that everyone should be considering just in any kind of situation to keep yourselves regulated while also trying to figure out what kind of situation you're dealing with. Typically, like we said, folks in crisis don't have the ability to think through these things because their emotions are high and their rationality is low. So being someone who is in more of a place of regulation, which requires all of us to know what our triggers are and to know ourselves more and be self-aware when we are triggered so that we can handle situations without us kind of adding to the situation. So again, the questions that she asked is, am I reacting to what is happening now or something that happened before? Is this an actual threat or just a feeling I don't want to feel? Will leaving keep me safe or just comfortable? So those are the three questions just to, keep in the back of your mind. And like she said, it's not something that in real time things happen and things escalate pretty quickly. But I think if you kind of consider these in all kinds of situations, whether it's you talking to a friend and they mention something pretty triggering and you want to figure out how to react, asking these questions in like low stakes kind of situations is a good start of where to practice them. Because the more that we know ourselves, the more that we're able to handle the crisis situation. And when we're triggered, I think a lot of it goes back to recognizing that whatever is escalating this individual, even though they insulted me or anything like that, it's not about me, and to not make it about me because it is about them. So in order to be able to know how to react in those situations, it's just better for yourself to know what triggers you. And that's kind of the work that Dre and I, and all social workers and therapists, we have to be aware of while we're working with folks.
And I know, like, obviously we do this professionally, and this is what our job is all day, every day, but, and you guys are very generous with your time and you're giving back to the community as much as you can. And it is asking a little bit to kind of lean into that uncomfortableness, especially if it's, I imagine this is not something that is experienced every day. I hope not. I hope you're not working with clients or residents, members, whatever y'all call them, like who are escalated every single day. I imagine it's few and far in between. And when it is though, and so it seems like asking a lot to like kind of work on these things within yourself for a volunteer gig, but at the same time, vulnerable populations, the community is hurting and struggling, like how do we still show up for them in these moments when this is not their best self and I'm here once a month, all those types of things. So it is asking for some work on your end, but I think at the same time everybody wins because you've learned something about yourself and it's a skill you're going to use other places in everyday life.
This is definitely a transferable skill
Yeah.
to bring into situations or dynamics, relationships that might be a little more challenging for yourself. Does anyone have any responses or comments or questions about the video or anything?
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
Like, some of us don't have the option of leaving, but we feel like we need to ask the person to leave and come back when they're ready to come back calmer, maybe the next day or whatever.
Yeah, and that's a boundary that, boundaries are good, especially we're not standing here and saying, like, put up with all of this verbal abuse or anything like that. But having boundaries, especially I think when expectations are placed, and things like that might be helpful. So, and I think especially when people might feel like they're not able to de-escalate an individual, might be like, hey, I can see that you're not in a place to talk right now. I'm gonna give you a minute and I'm gonna take a step back. You have your moment or whatever. And as long as they're not a danger to themselves or others in that moment, like give them that space and then come back and say like, can we revisit this? Just as an example.
Was there anything else you were gonna add to what you had said?
Well, I know, for us at Calvary, our policy is to, if someone just is really escalating and becoming verbally abusive and stuff, is to ask them to leave, invite them to leave. If they choose not to, we then say, if you're not going to leave, we will call the police department. And then most people leave, but that's rare, that is rare that happens. So.
I'm curious about, like, we're talking about a vulnerable population, but what if we ourselves are stressed and we are the ones that are not acting in a way that we would like to? Things happen in our lives. We can lose family members or have an argument with a spouse, etc. What are certain strategies that would help mitigate that for us so that we can respond in a way that is de-escalating rather than escalating?
And that is where all of this kind of comes into place, is doing a check-in with yourself and being like, okay, where am I at today? I'm emotionally exhausted, like I have all of this going on. If you are working with someone, if I have a bad day or I'm not doing well, I'll, say to Drea, like, hey, I'm going through a lot, like, just wanted to let you know. So I know that folks in different organizations and things like that, or in workplaces, it's like just a quick check-in of like, hey, how are you doing today? So that the other person can keep an eye out for you and be like, oh, well, I'm gonna let you kind of take a step back because I know that you're going through a lot of stuff, especially if the issues that you're dealing with certain individuals are close to what's going on in your personal life. And then another thing that if you're able to do it, I imagine that folks aren't typically by themselves when they're doing work, but if I know for myself that I have reached my threshold and I'm not helping the situation, I will take a step back and be like, Drea, I think I need to tap you in because I know that this is triggering me personally, and at this point, I am not gonna be helpful moving forward. And so that's also when it's helpful to know who you're working with or know individuals, because Drea and I have known each other for all of this time that we've been working all of the streets and stuff like that. So I think we tend to be able to recognize when each other is going through something, and then we'll be able to be like, oh, okay, like I'm seeing a situation, I'm like taking a step back and I'm seeing that Drea is activated and then this individual is also activated. So let me step in and try and move the energy a little bit so that Drea can have a moment, and then maybe that interacting with another individual might be helpful for that individual also.
Yeah, because burnout is real. We're all in this room because we want to help people, and if we aren't in a place to help ourselves, how can we help anyone else? So I would hope you'd be able to tap in another volunteer, go outside, take a break for 10 minutes, whatever that looks like for you, just finding whatever that tool is to just de-escalate your own self. Or if I need to take a break, if, I've been volunteering 4 times a month, maybe I should reduce it down to twice a month. And whatever that takes for you to get back to that place, and you might not, and that's okay too. I think at the end of the day, we all care about each other, and we all want to make sure that we're in this work for the right reason. And sometimes that reason where burnout gets really high, you kind of forget or lose that reason, and that's also totally okay too. So in the moment, it depends. If something were to happen, you're like, wow, I had a really strong, intense reaction, and I don't really know why. Let me check in. Let me check in and see what's going on internally. if that means leaving, hopefully it's not in a place you're leaving a volunteer alone or anything like that, but I think we all would want to lean on each other and just check in and make sure that other person's okay first before, oh, they're so flaky and just making all these assumptions, you know, that's not right either, so. That takes practice though, you know, it's tough, but great question. Always look out for yourself.
And check-ins I think are very helpful. I've been in jobs where that is kind of a regular thing as we're like going into our shift of like, hey, just even a quick one of like, where are you at physically, mentally, emotionally, and then how can we support each other through it, so.
We should put the HALT acronym. Has anyone heard of HALT, what that acronym stands for? You wanna share it?
I can't remember the exact.
So HALT, H-A-L-T, or if you have like kind of a more intense reaction when you're like, that was weird. Are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Are you tired? And it's like, maybe I'm not as angry as I think or maybe I'm not as, you know, at that point that I think I am. I'm just hungry. Oh yeah, I haven't eaten in 8 hours. Or I'm just tired. I had 2 hours of sleep last night, something like that. So our emotions are tied to our bodies and the physiological responses of our bodies. So pulse is just kind of think of that. If you're like, that was a weird response or that was a weird reaction. What's going on? Ask yourself, are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And then it's like, you know what? I'm just tired, and maybe I should go home and or maybe I should go to bed early tonight, get some extra sleep, something like that. So next time we'll add that one.
I have one other question that goes for everybody that works in the pantries and for you guys. We talked about the sky falling in the last quarter of 2025. There was kind of an acute escalation.
Can you speak up so we can?
Sure. I can hear myself in my hearing aid really loud. I was afraid that I was shouting. We talked about the sky falling in the last quarter of 2025 because SNAP benefits and so people were really, the demand of visits was up. Would you guys say that you think that there's been an escalation in general over the last 6 months or not really?
It's really hard to measure that. I almost say that there's always some sort of safety net or exterior or like external stressor going on in the world that I might be able to account for because I read the news every day, or I might not be able to account for. So I know there's been certainly some with the war in Ukraine, with obviously the war in Iran right now, with the Jeffrey Epstein files was a big one. So there are like more external, bigger world, like global issues that do trickle its way down to people's own triggers, especially the Jeffrey Epstein one specifically because that had to do with child sex assault, and child sex assault victims are being re-traumatized and re-triggered. And so I think there's always going to be some sort of, and yeah, that the food just the failure and the crumbling, the purposeful failure and crumbling of the safety net system for the most vulnerable populations that we have is certainly. I saw that coming. I was like, ugh. And for boots on the ground, like us, it's like this is going to be so hard on all of us when it hits. Like $25 a month for food benefits is insane. Like that's not what can you buy for $25? So and that was for an 86-year-old lady who lives alone here in town. So yeah, I think that and it can be something that we're in tune to just because we are keeping up with like worldly events, or just asking. But yeah, so yes.
Yeah, and along with that also, I think especially we kind of, the people that we see are usually not having the best day when we encounter them. And so obviously our research population is skewed. So even though, let's say the stuff with funding being pulled, with like food benefits, we encounter folks all the time who those benefits were not helping to begin with. And so we see that. Like, are we seeing a little bit more? Yes. Are we, I wouldn't say that it's huge since we see it all the time. So I guess that would be also a question for you all, seeing as that you are, you see folks more on a kind of regular communal basis, so.
Good question.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Just an example of when individuals are in that crisis mode or are activated, triggered, and coming from a place of dysregulation. Some basic things that you can do, obviously active listening. Try not to interrupt. I know sometimes we want to make that connection, but sometimes I have ADHD and I am an interrupter. So I have to really rein it in and be like, okay, let me listen first. Let me listen to understand versus listen to respond. So that is a big point for me. A big learning, a big growth edge for myself. So stay curious is another one. Just continually, instead of making maybe assumptions, trying to find out more about this individual and their story, their experience. That typically helps folks. We can't just generalize and lump everyone who is unhoused in the same situation, because some people might see it differently. Some people are like, I'm not homeless, because their definition of home is different, right? So those are just some things to keep in mind. Some things that we in crisis intervention training that are harped on are repeating and summarizing someone when they're expressing something. If I don't, silence is okay, and if I don't have anything to add to something, just repeating things back of you lost your benefits, and then that usually will help folks kind of share more or be open to talking more. I'm trying to come up with other examples of that, but I'm blanking right now. But just, that's one easy one that you can do, is just repeating the last couple of words that they said, so that it reflects it back to them, and then they can also internalize that and then keep going. And then summarizing what you have heard them say. So what I'm hearing is that you are angry because of this, this, and this. Am I understanding that correctly? And if you're wrong and they say, no, absolutely not, I'm sorry, okay, what am I missing? Or help me understand. And then responding calmly and being aware of your tone, of your delivery, of your volume, and then being able to maintain non-threatening body language, so that folks you'll keep yourself safe, but also, don't be standing in front of someone and be like, yeah, how can I help you today, right? That doesn't seem like
incongruent.
Yeah, that's incongruent with what's going on. Also, ask them their question. Ask them their name. There are so many instances when I even forget to introduce myself and ask someone what their name is, and I think that's a great starting point too. So you can refer back to it and be like, okay, Drea, it really personalizes who you're talking to and makes them feel heard. Self-disclose if you feel like it's appropriate, but keep the focus on them, right? So if you're there are individuals that I have seen, that I've worked with, that are oh, I've been in that same situation, I know what you're going through. That can be very invalidating because you have not lived this individual's experience. And so keeping the focus on them, you could say oh, I've been through something similar, and then keep going, because it's not about you again, it's about them, and then creating that connection to them.
Yeah, I think the word or the phrase that gets most, especially first responders, in trouble is, I understand what you're going through. No, you don't. And somebody, I was on a call the other day, I was in Arvada because I'm a relief clinician for their community support team for anyone who lives in Arvada. Great alternate response program through the fire department. But it was 16-year-old bit mom. They were in a physical altercation. There is a long history of hospitalization, suicide attempts, behavioral outbursts. She was too young to be diagnosed with a personality disorder. Most likely she has a personality disorder. The fire paramedic said to Dad, I understand, because he was frustrated about potentially taking this kiddo to the crisis center. And he's like, no, you don't understand. I was like, oh, don't say that. I can't imagine what it must be like going through what you're going through right now. It's the same thing as I understand what you're going through, right? But it's not trying to put there's a difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is just feeling sorry for somebody, whereas empathy is I can't imagine what it's like being in your shoes. It's more taking like sympathy to another level of kind of like how bad the situation was. So a part of that active listening is not necessarily trying to like say that I know what you're going through, or I've been there, oh, this worked for my family, or this worked for me, why couldn't it work for you? It is purely just that listening to understand. Listening to understand versus listening to just like give them a suggestion, because they might not be in that state where they want to solve every problem that they're going through. It could be a state of they just need to be heard. I would say like 99% of what we do is just listening to people, like in our role, because whatever situation has caused them to be in that really lonely place in Hull, right? Of they just don't feel like anyone is out there supporting them or hearing them. Another part of active listening is open-ended questions versus close-ended. So not just yes or no questions, but we're asking open-ended ones, and then empathizing with their situation versus just trying to like give them all these solutions, because most likely they've tried a lot of these different solutions and they're here to this point for a reason. So I know for me too, just adding on, kind of circling back to responding calmly, my face gives away like everything that I'm thinking, and that is the hardest part for me on these types of stressful calls and folks that are escalated, is maintaining this and also not like, so tone, body language, eye contact, all of that is part of how you're responding to somebody who is escalated, screaming, all those things. So that's the only thing I wanted to add with that. But yeah, self-disclosure, just be careful with that one. Is it about you or is it about them?
And self-disclosure works for some folks, and they're like, oh yeah, like it makes them feel less alone. But again, just what are you comfortable sharing, having this person have information about you and things like that. And then going back to what Drea was saying about empathy, I'm just thinking about that video of Brene Brown, like sympathy versus empathy. Look it up if you. It's something that we could have put in here, but we didn't think about it. But in that video, they say no empathetic response starts with at least. So if you're like, oh, at least it's not raining, that doesn't help the person's situation, right? It's like, oh, I lost all my benefits. I'm trying to make ends meet, and I was able to pay for this month, but I'm not able to pay for next month's rent. Well, at least you have your house right now. Like that doesn't feel good, right? So no empathetic phrase starts with the words at least.
And it's hard to do. This is hard stuff to do.
Yeah.
This is language we've all been using like our whole lives, and it's reprogramming how we're responding. So we are going to trip up and say things that we don't necessarily mean. But I think acknowledging it in the moment is can really help the next interaction you have with that person, or make sure they even come back, or whatever the case may be. Is, oh, you know what, they were super compassionate at Golden Pantry and Thrift, not the other way, last time I was there. So I'm gonna remember that interaction, because it's the difference between sometimes folks not utilizing those services and then utilizing them, so.
So you do all these responses with our guests, and they obviously come in escalated, and no matter what you say, you can say, tell me more, it must be hard, compassionately listen. They have obviously mental health issues, so this isn't working. It works with most people, but with some people it doesn't work.
I think that
So then what do you
repeat
do?
the question?
Oh.
Sorry.
For the example, the question, comment/question was like, when these steps in active listening don't necessarily work to de-escalate a person.
Right.
I think taking that time out, it's like, okay, I think we need to take a break right now. I need to go help X, Y, and Z, or help whoever. I'm gonna check back in with you for 5 minutes. And I don't know what the setup here, it's the food bank, and like, it depends on what the person is here utilizing, I think. But I think really just, okay, this isn't working right now. Do you mind coming back later? Do you mind if I go do this and then I'll check back in with you? Just really creating that space. Because when folks are escalating with me, and I can pretty much take anything, but the line for me is crossing, like they're being racist, they're being misogynistic, they're being homophobic. I will say, unless we can bring this conversation back to a professional level, then I'm gonna go. If it's a scenario where I need to assess somebody for like a mental health hold, that's different. But if it's a scenario where we've met all the needs that are here as to why we're called out, then unless we can move back to that professional place, then I'm gonna have to end this interaction. And it could be something along those lines.
That's when the boundaries come into place. So if these don't work, it's like, okay, then this is, we're gonna ask you to do this, we're gonna ask you to leave, and X, Y, Z. But the boundaries, if you can't rely on the soft skills that you have provided, then having the structure of what is next will be more helpful.
I'd say in our situation, one of the things, we've been in situations where people become a little more aggressive, they're physically getting closer to us, is that we do have about a desk that we're behind, but we always need to have somebody else in the offices, so that we can get two people coming in, and that I think makes us feel safer as people coming, because for me by myself to say, I really would like you to leave, I feel like that could escalate, but I'd be all by myself. So I'd much rather have another body coming forward, so I think that policy for us.
That's always helpful.
I don't do any of this stuff by myself. And I at least try to have Angela with me. I try to avoid officers as much as possible, but yeah.
And some of these things are just planning to make sure, sometimes we'll be saying, wait a minute, everybody just left, and we're kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Because we don't know who's gonna walk in the door.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, related to that, the middle sentence there, keeping a safe distance, non-threatening body language are important. As an example, you don't try to get it between two people, separate them type thing. You need to keep a safe distance for yourself if it's that much escalated. Do you agree?
Yeah, again, the question or asking about clarifying what a safe distance is, essentially. But I think certain people, depending on who they are, right? Some people will feel comfortable being like, hey, break it up. If that person is comfortable with that, then I don't want to say by all means, but our officers are like, break it up. There are different types of personalities, but again, keeping in mind, will my action escalate this person or not? But then it's also keeping the other individual safe, as well as the person that you're interacting with. But I imagine that it has escalated to a degree that it might need some outside intervention if it's to the point where you're having to leave for safety purposes, especially if there's some threats being made and aggression, things being thrown and stuff like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. I would say most people in this room don't want to get in between two people and go like this.
Yeah, and it's not expected.
Yeah.
So whatever, if that is not what you want to do, certainly. I don't get in between folks. But yes, just to keep everyone safe, if you can remove yourself from the situation as the person who needs to step back, then go ahead and do so. If you need someone to kind of be an extra shield as you're walking away, sure. But yeah, I think getting into physical contact with any other individual typically starts escalating them even more.
And from a calling 911 perspective, if you're the one who's directly involved or observing something, please be the one that actually calls 911. When we do
If you're
telephone, yes, step away where you can, or if there's an observer who's seeing this from a distance and this feels off and it's escalated and all the things, be the one that calls, because the problem is a lot on our end when it gets to dispatch, it's a third or fourth, sometimes fifth party calling, and the call taker has a lot of really important questions for the person who's there involved in it. And if you say, I don't know, or hold on, let me text them, it really slows down that process. And then we see it on our end, because I like to say we get 10% of the 10% of what's happening. And so if it does rise to that level where law enforcement needs to be involved, if it's like, well, I can't say if they usually ask questions around drugs and alcohol, they usually ask questions around weapons. And if you're like, I don't know, that's our officers see, and they're like, what do they want me to do with this sort of thing? So I really encourage a system of being either the person directly involved or the observer be the one that calls, or you can text 911. You can also do Crime Watch, which is online, to type in if you don't feel safe calling. I'm sitting at my computer, I can almost like text into 911, because there's a lot of those vital questions that dispatchers have that will determine the type of response that comes, honestly, if it's emergent or non-emergent, or because there's priorities for calls that come into 911 from priority 1 all the way to 6, and it can be like, why is nobody coming? It's because there's like the stuff that actually gets to police on their dispatch system, because it's like 3 persons removed, is just not actually what's happening. So keep that in mind.
I'm trying to be mindful of time. Do folks need a little bit of a break right now, like a bio break, or should we just keep on going? Keep on.
I'm seeing this. Okay.
No. Okay.
Stretch.
Some other things that might be helpful with folks as they are interacting with you. Avoiding certain phrases like calm down. Calm down typically does not work. Saying okay actually for some folks is gonna be a trigger. It's like, I'm feeling suicidal. Okay, it's like, is that okay? That doesn't mean it's okay. So a lot of people, especially in those heightened moments, will interpret them that way, right? So okay, it's so interesting, because I think for myself on calls as well, like being mindful of how much I say okay, even though it's just kind of a filler word and like supposed to be validating, sometimes it might not. So just be aware that that might not be helpful for some folks. Typically I say, and avoiding, I understand, so I hear you, just reflecting back, like, wow, that seems like it's really affecting you. Yeah, I can see how sad you are around that. Just reflecting things that maybe you're observing without necessarily interpreting what they're feeling. But even if they correct you, that's okay. Rupture and repair is usually what creates connection. So saying, I'm sorry, tell me more so that I can understand better. What is this person needing in this moment? Typically for us, when it's crisis, there is something happening. Yes, this person has maybe a lot more things going on in their life, things that we cannot solve in this moment. Whether it's they lost benefits, they might be up for eviction. These are things that we're not able to solve immediately. So going back to, okay, what are you needing right now? What is the thing that you came in for? Or is it a bus pass? Sure, we'll give you a bus pass. So when you feel like everything is kind of like all over the place, going back to, okay, what are you needing is a good spot to kind of ground you. And then providing realistic options for things. Instead of saying what you can't do, you can say like maybe once, but then saying what you can do, right? So can you put me up in a hotel tonight? Sorry, that's not something we're able to do. What we can do is connect you to our housing navigator who might be able to put you on some housing lists. Or we can refer you to some shelters down in Denver. So instead of focusing on what you're not able to do, focusing on what options you have and letting them kind of decide from there. Because remaining empowered is one of the big things that I think helps when folks are feeling out of control when they're in crisis. And then create expectations and maintain boundaries when appropriate. So kind of the thing that we had talked about of, if all of this stuff isn't working and you know that like you're circling the drain a little bit of we're talking in circles, noting that it's like, I'm seeing that our conversation is going in the same direction and we're not able to find a solution. If you continue to be upset, then please step out, and we'll check in with you in 5 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, I think that space could be helpful for everyone, just to breathe, get that oxygen back up to that frontal lobe, and just be able to be rational again. But boundaries are important, and they're kind of hard to enforce sometimes, especially if it's somebody who is a repeat violator or not meeting the expectations regularly. Last time we were here, we had a discussion around expectations about speaking with staff. you're not meeting those expectations right now. Or if somebody is physically getting too close to you, like, oh, you're good, I'm good right here, like, I don't need, just name it. Like, sometimes we're kind of afraid to you're calling somebody in more than calling out. So there's calling somebody in versus calling somebody out. And if you're making them a part of the dynamic, that's more calling somebody in versus I'm gonna call police and trespass you. It's like, well, that's like up here. But again, if they're violating the boundaries, if they are violating the expectations, then there has to be consequences for those things. But then also having that person be part of that is also really important and gives them buy-in, and it gives them a reason they don't want to lose this resource any more than anyone else, I would imagine. So how can I say help me help you quite a bit. So help me help you right now. We are going in circles. We're not able to meet a resolution or a solution to your issue. What else can I do to support you in this moment? Versus, but then again, like if they're escalated, I think having those hard, like we have not met the expectations. I've asked you to lower your voice, whatever that looks like. We're gonna now move to step outside for a break, come back in an hour, whatever that looks like, depending on the time. But yeah, every place is gonna be different with what that looks like. But that's why I think having like kind of set expectations and volunteer dynamics, making sure there's always a second with you, things like that. Having a process to calling 911 if it escalates to that point. Thinking about all those things ahead of time, so in the moment we're not like, oh, now I don't know what to do, sort of thing. So, yes.
Do y'all offer emotional regulation training to clients? It's like, this is like how we can manage a situation, but is there a place where you say like, hey, I see you're struggling, here's a resource?
We usually will inquire about therapy, like what if they're currently seeing a therapist, if they currently have a caseworker of any sort, and we try to refer back to, okay, is that something you're comfortable, is this interaction something you're comfortable going to your therapist about today or the next appointment? If they don't have any sort of therapeutic support, then not necessarily. But when I'm working, especially with folks that we've worked with over and over again, I usually ask them, what is their expectation? Like, what are you expecting every time you call 911 or you were triggered and then, I'm over here in your home again? Because I usually say, like, nobody likes having law enforcement knocking on the door at whatever time, or having a mental health professional come out to their home. And so I try to meet them, again, where they're at with like, okay, maybe this time they say no to me, but then maybe if I continue to build that bridge and relationship with them, they will say yes eventually. Because I don't want folks being like this distressed in my community. I know that everyone has their own paths and things like that. And I know that I just want to support people with the needs that they have. And if that includes like a therapeutic support, then yes, because that therapist is going to help them with coping skills. They're going to help them with the trauma that they might have been through and really leaning into that. And so I can check in to see if they have those things, but then if not, then unfortunately it can be a situation where we're just kind of out there to put the fire out and not necessarily solve the bigger issue. But one day, I hope, I like to plant the seed, as I put it, and hopefully one day they'll kind of buy into that and know, because nothing worse than involuntary care. So as much as we can do voluntary, we're going to take that route. So yes and no, it's probably the same skills that we all learned growing up that they have, but then there's that trauma response that we just don't know what it is. And then we're all in this situation where it's just what seemed like a normal check-in, and then now we're having to call police and trespass them or something like that. So,
but that's a good point of maybe offering something like this as like an open training for folks. Typically we just kind of start with like those who are wanting it, volunteers and all that kind of stuff. What I found is that folks who might need this the most might not be in a place to receive this. So that's also something to consider. And then along the same lines, I think a lot is underestimated around modeling these things. So even modeling all of the things that we talk about when dealing with folks, you know, that is also something, another way that folks absorb like how to maintain healthy boundaries if they see someone who is doing this. And that's the thing, is people might take offense to it, or they might not be in a place where they are able to identify, okay, this person has healthy boundaries, right? So so it really, so on our calls, typically modeling it is how we do it, but having something more formal like this we haven't explored, but that might be something that we might be interested in exploring. So thank you for suggesting that. We only have a couple here. Let's see. Things to remember: most people with mental illness are not and never will be violent. I think there's like a huge bias of like people with severe and persistent mental illness being violent, and I think because we hear the most extreme versions of that, like in the news or through people's experiences. This is from American Psychology Association, a PhD led research. She said, when we hear about crimes committed by people with mental illness, they tend to be big headline making crimes, so they get stuck in people's heads. The vast majority of people with mental illness are not violent, not criminal, and not dangerous. And of course, that's kind of why we're here when it's law enforcement. Law enforcement comes from a perspective of, you know, maintaining everyone's safety, and they might have to look at it through a lens of safety in that way. Just, not that we don't, but we're more on the emotional safety kind of.
Yeah, people, not only are they not violent, they're more likely to be victimized than to be the perpetrator or the person committing the crime. Most likely to have it committed against them. So that's just stats, but I don't have any of those.
And I think also they were saying that the crimes usually related to these folks are things related to getting their needs met, like stealing food or something like that. So it's less of on the violent end. Remember not to make assumptions, slow down, be curious, and look for more information from the individual. And then rather than asking what is wrong with this person, ask what has happened to this person, because that through that trauma-informed lens of this individual is presenting themselves to me today, collectively having all of their trauma kind of backing them up. Similar to us, we are all of our experiences combined, but we might have more regulated systems than the other individuals. So thinking about that is also another question to keep in mind. And then this is just us, things that we offer, a calming presence, I hope. We're not here to escalate.
I don't know, I've told somebody like, that was an outsized reaction. Like, what is happening right now?
We do assess folks for mental health holds. So Drea and I are licensed, so we are able to place people on 72-hour holds, and the 72 is kind of a misnomer also. We're able to take a person's rights away, which similar officers are able to as well, to be assessed at a hospital. And then we also connect folks to ongoing resources, which include all of you. So again, we really appreciate the work that you do. And I say we are only as good as our resources, and I'm very thankful that Golden has a lot of people who care and a lot of resources for such a small community, and so we rely heavily on you all, and so we want to be here for you all, and because we utilize you, you know, without you, we wouldn't have places to refer folks to.
Go back a slide, actually. One thing I wanted to add about, in general, like things to remember, not only the point I had made earlier about more likely being victims, but people are not their mental illness. People are living with mental illness. They are not a schizophrenic. They are not, if somebody has bipolar disorder, they are not that illness, just like somebody who is sick with a physical ailment is not that. It's people living with disabilities versus the disabled, things like that. So we might be seeing them at their worst, but that is just not who they are. Are there of course exceptions of the rules, but 99% of the time, that person is not who they are when they're escalated and, you know, at a place where it's supposed to be for community and gathering, and you know, probably escalating themselves and everyone else around them. So just keep that in mind too.
I have a question in that regard. What advice would you give if you're, let's say it's a Sunday morning church service, you're in the back, you're the usher, host, whatever you call that role, and somebody who's clearly agitated, maybe talking to themselves, maybe disruptive to the environment, how would you engage with that individual?
I'd probably just go up to them, and because there's a guy who's walking around downtown doing that, and I've never met him before, and until he's just, I usually kind of let him do their thing. But if it is in a place where it's like a closed room and people are trying to listen and engage, I just go up to them directly. It's like, hi there, my name is Drea. How can I help you? Is there anyone here you're looking for? Can I direct you in a certain direction? Now, if somebody is responding to internal stimuli, which is talking to themselves, is it directable? Which means, are they gonna respond to your question? Like, are they able to respond to external stimuli, so you walking up and speaking to them? Or is their internal stimuli that strong where they can't be grounded in like the space that they're in right now? In that case, I would say probably call it in, just so an officer can go like assess for them. Because it's Sunday morning, we're not gonna be working, but that's also something that we would do too. So it depends, like kind of how they're, but yeah, I think being direct and going to that person just to gauge where they're at is important, especially if it is in again, like kind of a closed environment where other parishioners are there and we're all just trying to be there for service. So they're there for a reason, so we're trying to figure out what it is, so, yeah.
And yeah, I think also another thing that folks can do is like distract also, like, oh hey, let's talk about, this is a XYZ, let's all go outside and get to learn more about each other. Just, little things that, and it's so hard to respond and give like a precise answer because each situation is so different, and I always hate that answer. I always hate that answer. As someone who lives in like this gray area of it depends, I hate that answer. So I'm sorry if that triggers anyone. But yes, I think just relying on those skills. Once it becomes more disruptive, I think then call for police or call for co-responders if we're available, so that we can keep it from escalating further. But that is a good start of figuring out whether or not they're able to process things from process output.
And I don't endorse this, but I have told little white lies. I'd be like, oh, they're calling me, I gotta go to this other call, and if it's just like that, if somebody is like really in this cyclical just stream of consciousness when they're speaking, like I gotta go, or you know what, service ends in like 2 minutes, you wanna like go out, we'll have lunch here soon, you wanna go outside and come back in, little white lies might get you a little bit further if it's like that disruptive. But I'm not gonna say lie to people, but I have had to use tools to break the just stream of consciousness that they're just saying. So yeah, it depends. Yes, ma'am.
So is this a time to ask
Yes.
questions?
Oh yeah, we were almost
So
25 minutes.
someone who wasn't able to be here has a question.
Okay.
So how to manage a situation where someone comes in to the space, and others are waiting, and so I kind of brought this up, they either physically move ahead of them, they come up and demand to be served next or first, or they're like, at our pantry, people can actually select the food they want.
Do they do it one at a time?
You do it one at a time. They can actually choose the food, so somebody is over there with them assisting, but they're taking a really long time, and people are waiting and they're just oblivious. So, tips for responding or helping. I mean, you've shared some things already about how to interact with.
What are the hours of the pantry?
10 to 3.
Okay.
Our pantry.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if somebody moves themselves to the front of the line and is kind of pushy about it, hey, these other folks have been waiting here just as long. Let's respect everyone's time. Back to expectations, like the expectation is one person will be served at a time. and we have to wait our turns. You can return back, you know, if it's early in the day, come back in an hour, maybe it'll be less busy.
And that's when like the structure and the expectations and whatever else is really good to have to refer back to. And so I think even naming, say if they feel like something is urgent, it's like, I know that I can see that you're eager to get your food. Other folks are waiting in line. Let's get back to the line. Maybe even wait with them if that's someone that you feel comfortable waiting with.
Or if you have the staff to do, depending.
Yeah, and just talking with them, maybe distracting them by keeping them in conversation, are just some examples. But again, going back to the expectations of hey, this is what's going on, it'll be your turn soon enough, so that they understand, okay, this is the expectation, and then if I push past that, then there's gonna be another, like, we'll have to revisit it. And then as for people who are taking too long, is that the other part of it?
Yes.
Giving people like a time boundary.
Frame, like you have 10 minutes.
Time
I don't know if
frame,
that's
yeah,
too
having
short.
a time frame, especially, it's like, okay, let's pick these things out, how about, 3 more things, and then we'll have to move along. So again, the structure, having the structure to rely on when all else
And
kind
it's
of-
all in the name of respecting everyone's time. That includes people who are shopping and then the ones who are in line. And you guys, like, if it closes at 3 and someone comes in and they're 5 people deep or something, sorry, we're gonna have to come back tomorrow. Just that boundary is there. It's like, we are closed, we are volunteers. I am not being paid to be here. Come back tomorrow.
Well, I know Golden Pantry and Thrift say their pantry closes at 4, right? But
Yes.
they say the last
People
entry is at 3:30.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we often lock the door if we have 2 or 3 people in it. We close at 3, so no one else will come in.
So maybe consider having that, it's like, this is the time that we will close the door.
Yeah.
So if people are like, well, there are people in there, it's like, yeah, the cutoff
They
time
got
is
here on time.
2:50, yeah,
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Yeah.
yeah, so.
Oh, I think you were first. Or you wanna go, Chris?
Talk a little bit about the process of coming on to 2 unregulated people that are interacting in a conflict with each other.
That never happens.
And how that might de-escalate, or how you might insert yourself in that role in a way that's constructive for that relationship.
I think first thing that comes to mind in any situation like that is to separate the parties. So either having one person take one individual and the other, or maybe the person that you have a better relationship with, like, hey, let's just naming it. It's like, everyone's yelling, let's take a step back. Like, having the boundaries again to rely on, of, hey, this is what we're doing now. Kind but firm is kind of like the ideal goal.
And
But-
using names, Chris, let's go, come with me, let's walk over here. Like, I think when you, that kind of snaps people out of whatever, kind of heated moment they might be in.
Yeah.
And if that, start with that. If it doesn't work, then maybe utilizing their peers too. I've found, like, hey, I'm a referee for soccer, so if they've changed it to where only the captain can speak to the referee now, because they used to swarm us. Yeah. So if it's a player who's not the captain, like, you better go talk to your captain. You're not supposed to talk to me. Or, hey, captain, your player, number 6 is getting really heated. He's I don't want to have to discipline him. Will you go calm him down? So use the peers that are there too, to your advantage. Just because I know for me, there's a lot of folks who don't want to listen to me because I'm a mental health professional. Like, I'm not crazy, and they just kind of go to that. And so I suggest a lot of peer support. There's more like peer-on-peer group therapies versus just a therapist talking to you sort of thing. So I would utilize as many tools as you can in that regard. And what's an example of, can you give an example of something like that happening?
No, because they never
Somebody,
happened, and I told you,
somebody,
that never
somebody
happened.
pulling into the safe parking lot last night, and another safe parker gets out of the car and goes over there and says, "Hey, can I see your permit?" And they go, I don't have a permit. What are you even yelling at me about?"
Okay.
I mean, I think in those moments you can use, are you, I'm assuming that you showed up and like, we're gonna.
You were just told
talk.
about
No, I was told about this in
Oh,
retrospect, but
Oh,
that kind of thing
yeah,
is
yeah.
what happened.
I mean, I
So-
think in those situations, using your authority also, like, hey, I am one of the people who is in charge of the safe parking.
Yeah.
You know, I know that you're wanting to, you know, acknowledge what that other person wants. It's like, I know that you wanna keep this space. I know that you might feel protective of this space. Let me handle this individual and like talk to them about what the safe parking situation is like. So I think in those situations, using whatever authority that you may have already could already kind of diffuse the situation.
So, y'all both have your hands up, sorry, I didn't know. No, it's okay, go ahead.
To your question about like the boundaries and structure and stuff, wouldn't there be signs posted of like, you know, here's the expectations, it's right there, so
That would-
you can blame the
Could be.
sign, so I
Yeah.
would say like, I
Yeah,
don't
certainly.
Yeah, yeah.
Certainly, and I mean,
Diffuse, yeah.
Because I would assume that all these organizations have websites with these policies, have signage, have like, you know, some announcements or some kind, like, you don't just show up and like, people do whatever they want.
yeah.
So like, if there's a rule breaking instance or an escalated instance, we're like, hey,
Yeah.
this says we need to do such and such, let's go to that.
Sorry,
And a lot of-
my boss said it.
Yeah, a lot of places do have like the expectations or shared rules around, I don't know, rules, shared expectations to reference for other people. And then if people are coming in, it's like, all right, let's remember all of the expectations that we have here today, just as like people are coming in, you know? But a visual reminder is always, always a good idea.
And make sure it's
because-
in other languages too, I think,
Yeah.
besides English, all the ones that you provide. She's been waiting patiently.
So my question is, and I heard you say rupture and restore, so I don't know if this maybe ties in, but what if you inadvertently trigger an escalation in some way by using like, I understand, or, I know we had a case here not too long ago where someone just touched someone's shoulder and
Yeah.
touch was a trigger.
Yeah.
Like, do you have any tips or tricks on how can I like quickly backtrack to try to bring this back under control?
Apologize.
Yeah.
Apologize,
Own it.
apologize, apologize. Even if, like, you might not be responsible for that behavior, say someone else touched a person and that triggered them, and you witness that, and then they're kind of not getting anywhere, it's be like, I'm so sorry that happened, you know, I'll take a step back. But apology is kind of like the antidote for that rupture, right? And then going back to the repair aspect, it's how you repair it. We can't keep folks from getting triggered, but how are we reacting to them, and how are we trying to maintain that connection, not at a cost of our like mental or physical safety, but just an apology does wonders, even if you're not the one at fault, and acknowledging that and saying, oh, I'm sorry, I see that you know, that you don't like touch, and just naming things. I like saying like, see something, say something, but that's reference to a different thing, but when you're kind of out of ideas, like naming the things that you're seeing is really helpful. Someone's pacing back and forth. Oh, I noticed that you're going back and forth this whole time. I noticed that your breath is really elevated. I noticed that you're looking all around. So it's like, you're not interpreting the thing that's happening or how they're feeling. You're just like reflecting observable things back to them, so then it maybe helps to ground them also.
Well, if that happens, could you say, is there a way I can help you?
Absolutely.
I mean, is
Yeah.
that something that's valid? Is that-
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, keep that person out. Well, I don't know about that, but like, yeah, but still even offering them that avenue to share what is going on that you might not be privy to. Absolutely.
Yeah, and some people might not know what they need, but asking them would be, what are you needing right now? What can I help you with right now? And if they're like, I don't know, it's like, okay, how about I sit with you for the next 5 minutes and we can just, you know, we can just sit here together in silence. You don't have to talk. I'm not expecting anything from you, but.
And we've had that happen where we've had to just sit with someone for almost 20 minutes until they calmed down, and we just said, we're we're just here, catch your breath. They could hardly breathe, they were so upset.
Yeah.
They were gulping for air.
Yeah.
And so we separated them and just sat with them until they could talk.
And that is co-regulating. So if you are regulated yourself, like if I'm talking to someone who is breathing really heavily, like I'll just take deep breaths, like even if they're not taking it with me, for them to be able to kind of absorb that. So you're helping that individual just by being present and being regulated, you're helping that person to regulate themselves also.
Back to your example, don't y'all have some, like, aren't they given like placards with like the non-emergency number? If it's that much of a concern for the safe parker that somebody is there without a permit, tell them to go through the mic. It's again, like they always go back to like you guys in the daytime, it's like, it's too late, I can't do it right now. But just reminding them constantly, like, please go through
systems in place.
Yeah, non-emergency, it's
And then
not an emergency.
They need to trust those systems that are in place, like, but acknowledge, you know, I mean, if there's someone that you actually do want help from, maybe enlisting help from them to be like, oh, hey, you know, if you want to be the monitor for the night or something like that, I don't know what kind of, that might be a whole other thing. But, you know,
the conflict was with that person.
Yeah, okay. Right. But asking folks for help, like to help you do something is also another way of like connecting folks.
Agreed.
And you know, like when children are like, I want to bake, and you're like, you're gonna mess up this recipe, but let's do this together, right? So that's just an example. Yes, sir.
I have to go, but is there a way to get a copy of the slides?
Yeah, I can certainly send it over to
And the recording. And the recording, right? Isn't that gonna go out?
Yes, we'll have that as well.
Okay.
Maybe I'll send it to you, and then
to
Methodist Church.
the Methodist Church and
Christian.
Golden Pantry and Thrift, and then our other people.
okay, and then you can distribute this to whoever. This is like a, you know, a public thing. We'll make it so that people won't be able to edit.
Like Wikipedia. Any last lingering questions, comments, concerns?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Thank you for your time and for what you do. Truly, like this, like Angela was saying, the community here at Golden has is super strong. So I love it.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry for going over.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah,